All right. Don't worry about him. He's a little weird, but he's a good bot. So. All right, Silver. Let's talk about Ty.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, I guess you're like one of the oldest runners for this game, right?
Correct. At the time that I started running it with somebody else, I didn't even know that Jumpy Love had even done a run prior to that. So, as far as we were concerned, we were the pioneers.
Okay. You said there was a run that existed somewhere, but you had no idea about it until later?
I didn't learn about it until later when we were building the speedrun.com page that Jumpy Love had submitted a time for it, claiming to have been like the first run by a couple months prior to us. I didn't know it existed at that time. It wasn't until like 2014, 2015 that I learned it existed.
Gotcha. Okay. Was it any good?
He doesn't have a VOD of it.
Oh.
I have never seen it.
No vid, no did. That's what I say. But no, I don't know. That's a weird one. But sounds like you guys were the first, or you were the first people. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, what drew you to this game with like no prior knowledge or experience, right? No one's ever run this game. You're just like, I'm just gonna dive right in. What drew you to that?
So at the time, I was only really speedrunning Star Fox games, and I had a small group of friends that we had talked while I was streaming and everything like that. And we wanted to try and find a game that would be interesting to speedrun that nobody had done before. And a friend of mine in the group, who at the time went by Wolfluke13, had suggested a couple games, and we both actually had played Ty the Tasmanian Tiger way back when it first came out. And so we both settled on that game because we both had experience playing it. We both really liked it when it came out. And so we decided to then like immediately sit down and try messing around and see what we could find.
Okay. I see. And how did that go? You know, like what was the other person's name? Wolf
They used to go by Wolfluke13. At this point, they have changed names, but I have lost contact with them, so I don't know what they go by anymore.
Gotcha. Okay, so Wolf Luke, this person here. So the two of you were running. What was that like?
It was very stereotypical of like having no idea what's going on. Neither of us did any real glitch hunting before. We were both relatively new to speedrunning back in like 2012 when we started doing this. So we had little to no experience of anything. What we did is the old-fashioned look at SDA and Google Ty the Tasmanian Tiger glitches. So it was very, very much old school speedrunning. And so we had some pretty rough stuff. We had found a couple small skips, like spots where you could walk up cliffs that were very obviously not designed to let you walk up them. And some of those are still used to this day, which is kind of funny. But for the most part, it was really rough and the definition of having no idea what we were doing.
I see. Okay. I know that there are other people that show up later. Like I see a run by Henjo and J Camp. Those are some names that I've seen in here. Did they just appear, or I'm just curious how they joined, or how did you guys find out about them, or how did that work out?
So at the time, the only real communication we had was we had the hashtag Ty channel in the SRL IRC, which didn't really have anybody. It was just us that were playing it. It was me, Wolf Luke, and then another person who's still on the leaderboard, Rye Guy. We were the only ones in the channel, and then suddenly one day, I think it was Henjo just showed up in the channel asking questions. And I remember like waking up to like the channel actually having messages in it, which shocked me. But then just out of nowhere, Henjo and J Camp and they just started doing runs. They had asked us a couple questions, just sort of like clarify if there were any glitches that we knew of. And at the time, we didn't really have anything. We had a small little skip that we found with the Netty boss where you could skip the Thunder Egg get animation. But that was about the extent of what we had at that time. And so They asked us questions, we gave them the answers, and they just went, okay, well, we're going to go do our runs then. And just started taking it seriously.
I see. So I was actually talking to Sir Lawrence or Lon earlier today, and I asked him like, "Is there anything that you want me to ask Silver?" And he goes, "Oh, there's one thing I want you to ask him." And so, he says apparently J Camp had this weird situation around him where apparently people had accused him of cheating because he was using an emulator. I'm curious if you have any knowledge of this or any recollection of what happened.
So what I think it is I don't think it was anyone in what small of a community Ty was at the time. I don't think anyone
Mhm.
accused him of cheating. It was that the load times in Ty are drastic across the platforms, just
Mhm.
PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. But GameCube emulator loads almost instantly. And so
Ah,
JCamp was running on emulator because I believe at the time they had no console and no way to record any console. We allowed them to do the run on Dolphin because of how small the community was, and even at that point, we were considering like, is it really fair to be on emulator where the loads are instant, or do we try and like time out loads?
okay. That makes sense.
But I don't think there was any sort of like people accusing of cheating or anything. It was like at the time it was like a gray area where it's like we're too small to really nitpick stuff like that.
Mhm.
But should we do something about it for the sake of competitiveness?
I get you. Do you think this person streamed their runs?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you think that was probably might be someone from chat?
Oh, possibly.
If I had to guess, right? If it wasn't one of y'all in the IRC, then my next thought is it's probably someone in Twitch chat.
It could have just been some random chatter that thought that like it looked kind of weird that in an era where still capturing console was very like not commonplace
Mhm.
and most people were using like a dazzle so it looked really bad to have someone stream that looked really crisp and the loads were instant made it seem like something was happening behind the scenes, I guess. But
That's
even
fair.
at the time we knew they were on Dolphin.
Okay. Gotcha. You've been around like the whole time, right? For this, I imagine maybe you haven't been running constantly, but you've been at least had an ear out for the game, right?
Oh yeah. I've spent the whole time being behind the scenes. I ran the IRC up until when people abandoned SRL IRC. I was the one that Pack reached out to create the speedrun.com page. I used to run the old Google Doc leaderboard back when people did those.
Oh man.
Um, I wasn't the one who created the Discord server, but I was like one of the first 5 people in it. So
Okay.
yeah, the whole time I've had an eye on it, and I would just I actually thought it was really interesting and really cool to see more and more runners come to the game, especially after we got our spot in GDQ.
Yeah. Um, is that the Kythol one or the one? Because there was
Yeah,
another person who got in, but then they backed out, right?
it was Kythal did it. Dark Palpo was supposed to go, but something happened, and so he couldn't. So his
Hmm.
run got removed.
Gotcha. And then did Kythol take over for that one, or was that a separate GDQ?
It was a separate GDQ, if I remember correctly.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I remember hearing about that. That's why I wanted to double check. Okay.
There was some controversy about Kythal's run in the GDQ because that was, if I remember correctly, that was in like a time where speedrunning was still about making fun of how poor games were made back then.
Mhm.
And so, if I remember correctly, one of the developers of the game had donated, and instead of just being super thankful that a developer was watching, Kythal used that moment to berate the developer for making a buggy game. And I remember that
Mm.
not going over well. And then also, if I remember right, his run was supposed to be a pacifist one where he actively did not be a pacifist.
Yeah, that's a weird situation. I talked to him a little bit about it, and he says He's not happy with what he did, but
Yeah, but that's it's as long as like people acknowledge it, it looked really bad, and I think that's why people are really trying to push for it to have a return to GDQ, not just because the run is so much better now, but because we want to have a better representation than the time we got a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. Okay. So I found correctly. I think it might have been Dark Papo. I don't know how to say his name.
Either it's
Um,
fine.
I believe he was friends with Chronicies, or somehow was the
Yeah,
way that Chronicies found out about the game and started doing glitch hunting.
it actually wasn't because of him. They are friends. At least that's what I gathered from how much they talked on Twitter. But it
Mhm.
was actually from, I believe, me that Chronicies got involved, and that was because
Ooh.
way back when we were still trying to figure out any sort of glitches. I
Mhm.
had tried reaching out to people that were actual glitch hunters. The first one I reached out to was Ababob, the guy who was known for doing glitch hunting in Wind Waker.
Yep.
He and I wouldn't say like we're friends, but we talked enough to where I could reach out to him and he would actually respond. And I was curious as if he would be able to like help us. And he tried some things, but his plate was really busy at the time, so he didn't really stick around for long.
Mhm.
And I think it was that after that I had talked to Chronicies a bit, and then she started looking into it, and then broke the whole game wide open pretty early on.
Yeah. What were some of the things that she found?
She found quite a few ways to get out of bounds and skip major parts of the game, like major parts of the levels. Like the final level in the game, she found a way to get out of bounds within like the first 15 seconds and skip all the way to the end. That was one of the first things she did. Most of it were like level skips, like just
Mhm.
like slightly getting out of bounds enough to fly over areas. And
Mhm.
I remember one thing that she never let go of was when I was trying to convince her to glitch hunt Ty. I told her Ty had no glitches, and for every time she found something, she would quote me back on that. In fact, if you go look at the comment section of some of her glitch videos on YouTube, you can see her mocking me for that.
Brutal. But
Yeah,
I think that's just how things were back in the day.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Um, since we're on the topic of glitches, um, one of the things that I find really interesting about this story is that I think gate skip was like this theorized idea, like even way back in the day. I think someone pointed out, I think J Camp, somebody in their run, like stop, like while they're in the middle, that someone was chatting and they said something along the lines of like, "Oh yeah, if that skip was ever found, like we could just cut out like all of the World 3." Like there so like the idea was already there back in 2013 that you could, if you could skip that gate, you could finish it, right? So I'm just curious, did y'all have that idea together, or how did y'all come to that idea or think that it was possible?
So that actually came from Ababob. So when the
Oh,
little Ababob was able to do for us was he wanted to test how the game treated being out of bounds, because this was before we knew any of it.
mhm.
So one of the first things he did was he just loaded up the hub area and made it to where Ty's jump just went into the stratosphere. And
Okay.
the one thing we wanted him to check was if he just used that jump to go behind the gate at the start of the game, is the portal to fight Boss Cass even there? And he showed us that yes, it's there, it's always loaded, and is always accessible. So at that point, it became our equivalent to like the moon warp or barrier skip, where it was
Mhm.
like we know for a fact that all we have to do is get behind this one wall and a whole third of the game is completely irrelevant. But it was a matter of how do we get behind that gate that we just never were able to figure out. Even Chronicies tried for a long time and she never figured out anything. It was I actually made a YouTube video where I talked about the progression of this. And it's been a thing, for a long time, and it was really exciting to see it finally happen.
Absolutely. Do you remember some of the things that you tried to do for gate skip?
A lot of them were really basic. Like, I remember we tried to look and see if there was any way we could even remotely clip through any wall or anything, trying to find some small discrepancy in collision. We tried climbing up everything we could. We tried like using the same hack that Ababob did for modifying our jump to see if we had just got a small enough jump to this spot, could we walk up the cliffside to it? This, that, and the other. We tried a million different things to try, and we were just trying to see if the collision anywhere was wonky enough for us to maybe slip out of bounds and then walk behind it, or if there was enough of a weird collision where we could walk up a cliffside to it. Because we have spots in the run where cliffs are a little bit wonky and don't work correctly, so you can walk up them. So we were hoping that maybe one of the walls in the hub world was like that.
I see. That makes sense.
Again, it was like very rudimentary stuff because that was like 2012, 2013, where even emulators were just not really sufficient or decent enough to do a lot of what we would do nowadays, or what most people would want to do. It was very simple. Like, we could modify his jump height by just editing the RAM a bit, but most in-depth stuff we couldn't do. We couldn't dump the data and like extract the map contents and view it in a map editor. Those tools just didn't exist, so there was no way other than just ramming your head at a wall and hoping you went through it.
Yeah, it's a lot of times when you don't have like specialized tools, you kind of just got to like throw whatever you can at it, and that's usually not very what's the word I'm looking for? It's not super effective. It's like if there's a really easy way to skip it, you'll find it probably, but other than that, yeah, if it's really complicated, you're not going to get there.
Exactly.
Okay. I mainly want to talk to you about like this early era stuff because like everybody else in the community is like new school, right? So I'm like, I gotta get you in here to talk about old school stuff here. So what was I think it was Dark Papa was the one who grinded for the sub 1 hour, right?
Correct.
What do you think? Is there any like major glitches or changes or routes that made that possible, or what are your thoughts on that?
So it was definitely a combination of actual glitches being found thanks to Chronicies that really cut out a lot of what we were doing manually. And then it was also people that had experience with speedruns actually doing routing. The rough part about our original route is it was more or less we would just 100% a level back to back to back to back. We never really bothered to route out if it was faster to get 100% in level X or get it in level Y or split them up. We just played it as if we were essentially 100% in the game, but then just stopping at a point to go fight the final boss. We never did any like real routing because at the time we just didn't know anything about it. He ran Super Mario 64 and I just ran Star Fox. So it was communities that already had everything established for us at that point.
Makes sense. Okay. Alrighty. I think there was a PC port that was announced. Okay, there's like a beta version of it in like 2016, 2017. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so Chrome had announced that they were making a PC port. They originally announced it as an early access because they wanted people to be aware that they were actively developing it, and so you were more or less playing an in development version of a port. And the longest time, it was, at least for me, it was pretty stable. There was the average glitch happening, like texturing and lighting and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was a pretty solid port. And then over time, they eventually took it more than just a port and started to like remake the assets and upscale everything and make it widescreen. And they made it into something, like an enhanced port rather than just a straight port.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think the community was more interested in running on the PC version or the console? I mean, how did that break down?
It was almost instantaneously everyone jumped ship to PC because it was a lot cheaper to get into. At the time, the console run was everyone would run on an Xbox, like the original Xbox. And so not everyone was willing to shell out the price of an Xbox. Because even at that point, I think getting a used Xbox on like eBay or something was still like over $100. And then you had to buy a copy of Tie, which depending on where you go, it could also be upwards of like 20 to 30 bucks for just that. Then you had to get the controller and everything. So it was a lot easier to get a $15 Steam game than it was to possibly drop $100 to $200 just for a system and a game. So that also it got rid of the whole loads being a problem because the PC version was almost instantaneous loads on even pretty weak hardware. So it made it a lot easier to have a standardized format where it was a standard platform that everyone could compete on and be more or less equal.
Makes sense. Okay. I think Kythal wanted to push the console a little further even after the PC release because he was like a 50. I forget what time it was. 50. Oh, I think I'll look it up. 56, 57 or something like that. That's still active today.
Yeah, it was. I believe the reason why he wanted to do that was because after the PC port had come out, there was a lot more interest in it. The community was growing, and so there were more people looking at the game and more people trying to find little skips and stuff like that. At the time, we had just assumed that everything in the PC port would work one-to-one with the console since it was originally being developed as just a straight port. And it wasn't until like when they started to actually transition it to an enhanced port that we realized things weren't going to work one-to-one. But Kythal wanted to take everything that we had learned from the PC version and try to use those and backpedal to enhance the console run and bring all of the new strats into the old platform.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Trying to think here. If I remember correctly, there was like the beta version, right, when it was still in development, and that was a little buggy, but not too bad. And then there was the official release, which I think was better, and I think that's the one where most people run 51 TE on right now. And then after that, there was a patch that introduced ground swimming, and that one had problems because it could crash more often. Is that right? Or am I missing one?
Those are pretty much the important ones. The version that's used for 51 Thunder Eggs wasn't exactly launch. It was a couple patches after. But the
Gotcha.
reason why that version is used is they accidentally left it to where you could have multi-input. And so you could have a controller and a keyboard input stuff at the same exact time, which made a certain level in the run a lot easier to do when you can just dual input. After they realized they had introduced that bug, they fixed it so you could only have one input channel. So most people would run on that version just so it would be faster to do that. I don't remember what it was, but ground swimming was introduced as a result of them trying to address a different bug. And the crashing, it still persists to this day. There, you can pretty easily force Tie to crash. Though that's mostly if you're loading into a cutscene. If you try to mash the cutscene skip button during the load screen, the game crashes because it's trying to skip something before it initiates, and the game just crashes as a result.
Solidly done. Well done. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I talk about it correctly because I know that people said there was a time when it was kind of frustrating when a lot of runs would die, but I think that was the ground swim version, and that's before they realized the memory leak.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
What I think is,
go ahead.
sorry.
I'll let you go ahead.
I was just gonna say what I think is really is grounding is still a thing. The game has been patched multiple times since we've found ground swimming, and the fact that Chrome hasn't addressed it must mean that they're aware of the speedrun and they know how big of a deal it is, that they're willing to leave it because it's not really something you would find casually. It doesn't disrupt casual gameplay. You have to go out of your way to do it. So I think it's pretty cool that they didn't go and patch something that has, legitimate uses for the speedrun when a lot of developers don't really care and will patch something because it's a problem and we'll just get rid of stuff like that.
It's very cool. I do appreciate a developer who's like, you know what? Let's not rain on their parade. Were you around whenever Brandorn found the ground swimming glitch?
Yes, I was.
Tell me about
wasn't
that day. Not that you were around, but sorry, let me rephrase. Go ahead, I'll let you finish.
I wasn't actively running, but I was always watching the Discord because by that time, Brandorn had already found like a bunch of optimizations for levels. So I was watching as the version that came out that entered that ground swimming became possible, and Brandorn found it while not even trying to do that. He was trying to figure out a different skip entirely, and accidentally found ground swimming as a result. And then after he found that, he posted in the Discord like, "I tried one thing, completely ended up with something else. Maybe we should look into this instead." And then we tried to replicate what he had done, and I think a couple people had gotten it, but we didn't realize what you could do with it because it just made it look like Ty was swimming in midair, and we didn't have any idea what was going on or how to even control it. So most of the time we just did nothing. But it was a slow evolution of we can make him swim in air. Oh, if we're swimming against objects, we can go up. Oh, I wonder if we could swim up the wall, up to the gate. Oh, we can't, but we could maybe try swimming up the tree next to it. Oh, there's collision at the top. Oh, we can grab the top of the gate. I think we found something.
Yeah, I think you did find something. How soon after that ground swimming was initially found was gate skip, like a run with gate skip in it, done?
If I remember right, it was like a week. Brandorn had found gates or had found ground swimming. Then we had started to learn more about it and started to mess with it. And then I think it was the same day that gate skip was proven to be possible that a run with it was already done.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like I think it was Kythal actually who had posted in the Discord after like an hour where people were like talking about it being possible, and just like an hour later, Kythal just types, "I did it. I did it. I got gate skip."
I imagine that was I don't know if I think I talked to Kythal earlier and I used the word vindicating, but just this idea of like this skip has been in everyone's minds for, what is it, 7 years, Like this is something people have thought about and wanted for so long, and it was finally possible. And then the gates were open, like any thoughts?
It was really, really exciting, especially as someone that, like 7 years prior to that, I was sitting there in front of my little TV with my PS2, like, this could be possible one day. It might not be me, but this could be possible one day. We just need a few more things to align. And here it was, years later, it finally was imagined. It finally happened. It did seem a little funny that it wasn't found in the tradition that we wanted it to, where we wanted to try and find some way to exploit the geometry or the collision, but it was instead a bug that got introduced into a port that resulted in it.
Mhm.
But what it while that may seem like not as cool, the introduction of ground swimming affected the run in more than just gate skip. It changed a lot of routing for a lot of the levels, and it still does it to this day. We're still trying to find spots where we can do ground swimming. Even we've even found ways where we can force ground swimming to happen in non-traditional means. It it like revolutionized the rest of the run. So it was a really cool thing to happen for the run entirely, not just to finally see our equivalent to moon warp or barrier skip happen. It was a revolution, and it literally opened the floodgates to everything happening.
Absolutely. Um, I was just talking to Lon earlier today. I said it, but yeah, there. It seems like when that happened, like the game changed. Like this, like the real game starts now, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, we've been
Yeah,
playing Thai, but now we're playing Thai. You know what I
it
mean?
it allowed us to check like the possibilities of even doing stuff like out of order. Like, I remember there being talks of like, what if we had the equivalent of the reverse boss order? Because we
Mhm.
could use ground swimming to clip into the final set of levels first and do those out of order. And then we found ways to skip getting the very first boomerang, so leave Ty with only one boomerang through the whole game. Uh, it opened up the possibilities for the route to change drastically, which it did and didn't. We never ended up having like huge sequence breaks where we went out of order or anything like that. We
Mhm.
did change up the order that levels occurred, but it never made it to where like, oh, we go to the third set of world levels first, and then we go back to the first, then go to the third and go to the second and fight the last boss. Never did
Mhm.
anything like that, but would have been cool.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it opened a lot of doors.
Exactly. And I thought it would have been fun to revisit an old idea that Wolf, Luke, and I had way back in like 2013, where we wanted, at the explosion of the bingo era, where everyone was doing Ocarina of Time bingo, we
Mhm.
wanted to make a tie bingo. And that race is still up on SRL. You can still see our really bad bingo board. But when when ground swimming was found and we could go to any level in the game at any point, I was like, this would be a great time to bring back the bingo idea now that it becomes an open world game with this glitch.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think you should get on that. I think I was talking to a couple of them. I know that Kythal and Lon and Coral were in a call with me, and I think Brandorn was there too. I had asked something along the lines of like, has Ty ever had a tournament? And I think they said no, but I thought that would be a great opportunity. I think you're in a great spot. You know what I mean? Like the community's and it's very healthy. It's very large. Um, it's accessible. I think that a tournament would be really cool. Um, but a little bingo tournament or a bingo weekly could also be really fun too. So
Yeah, that was not really something we jumped on. We had talked about doing it, but at the time there wasn't enough people to really warrant it. We didn't have like the size of a community you would see like when people would do like Link to the Past tournaments and stuff like that. Our community wasn't large enough to have like a 32 entrant tournament. So that and also some people were a little afraid of playing in a tournament where they could just immediately lose because their PB is like 48 minutes when the record holder could be in the tournament with their 36-minute time. I
mhm.
didn't think that was the case because the whole point is to have fun. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you win or lose. But some people were apprehensive about it because of the huge discrepancy in sometimes.
Yeah. This is a tangent that I didn't intend to go down, but we did a Pokemon Snap tournament, which is my game of choice. Um,
Mhm.
and I think we had something like 20 something entrants, and you're not wrong. There is that discrepancy of like based on seeding, top seed usually plays against the bottom seed. So like, someone who has like a 25-minute time is up against someone who has a 20-minute time, right? It's like, oh, well, that's a big 5 minutes. Like it doesn't seem like it, but that's a big 5 minutes. And so yeah, that person's effectively destroyed. But with like a double elimination kind of style tournament, you could have it where everyone who lost in wave one is going to fight, and then it's like, oh, now 25-minute people are facing off against 23 or 24-minute people, and it's like, okay, see, now this is more up the alley. But I don't know. There's ways to do it where it doesn't feel like you're up against the world record holder and just out day one.
Yeah.
But I digress. Okay. Running low on questions here, but one of the things that one of the feelings that I've gotten talking to everybody so far has been I'm sensing a lot of like community and cooperation as opposed to competition. Right? Not to say that there's no competition whatsoever, but I definitely feel like people are almost like more interested in seeing the game get broken and seeing the game get pushed further by anyone than sort of being that person or beating other people, right? And I'm wondering if you have any, perspective on that.
I would say it has definitely been a very collaborative work. It definitely does show it's a good representation of how modern speedrunning has become. Where back in 2012 and 2013, it was all about being number one. It was about having the world record, it was about being the best in the world. But as speedrunning has evolved, it's become more focused on being a collaborative work. And I think our community is a good example of how a community can really come together and not focus on just who's on top, but how low that time can get. The community hasn't really focused so much on who's the record holder, but damn, look how low the time has gotten now.
Mhm.
Oh, it went from we finally got a sub 30 time. Awesome. It finally happened. We haven't really focused so much on the record holders. It was everyone being super excited to see that time get lower and lower and lower, that nobody's really cared about who the record holder is, just as long as we keep pushing it. And it's been really cool to see. And yeah, I definitely think there is less competition in the sense that people are at each other's throats to get the best time, and there's more coming together, finding stuff out, helping each other, and being the like pushing each other to be the ones that use the new strats. Oh, this person has the best time in here, they could probably optimize this better, or this person has they're more consistent with it, so they'll be the one that pushes it lower. It's always been about everyone helping each other like get things down, and just helping each other push the time lower instead of trying to push one person higher and higher up the leaderboard.
Beautiful. Alrighty. I'm all out of questions, but what I always ask before we end the interview is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think we should cover?
Trying to think.
I know it's a broad question, but if you're like, oh man, this video wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about,
I don't think it wouldn't be complete about it, but I did slightly mention it. When it came to running on console back in the day, there was a lot of discussion as to which console would be faster. It was really quickly ruled that PS2 was like the slowest to run on, and we thought GameCube was the fastest, just because of how fast like GameCube discs spin and how low the data was in comparison to like the PS2 or Xbox. But we didn't account for the fact that the Xbox is just so much better in every aspect, that the Xbox loads the game much faster, runs everything much faster, and is much smoother. That it quickly changed from GameCube is the dominant platform to, oh no, Xbox is just like several minutes faster just because of loads. And that's why it really pushed people to buy an Xbox. and
Gotcha.
not many people did. There aren't many runs that were done on Xbox. A lot of people, if they weren't pushing for the world record, they would just stay on GameCube.
I get you. Makes sense. Why go out of your way to buy an extra, $100 console just to save? I mean, how much time would that save, right? Going from GameCube to Xbox,
It
generally
was,
speaking.
I want to say it was probably about like a minute and a half of just loads. And
It's a
if
good
it was
number.
like, if you weren't, like I said, if you weren't pushing for the world record, then why really invest that money into it? Like if
Mhm.
you're 20th place and your run is like half an hour away from world record, is that minute and a half really going to make a big difference for you?
No, I don't think it will. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think we've covered just about everything.
Awesome. Well, this has been very enlightening, Mr. Silver.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and stop this recording here. Do. By the way, I did watch your history video